OOP's family have all come to celebrate her marriage, but her husband is showing his true colors. I am not OP. Original post from our Muslim marriage by a user who has since deleted her account. Trigger warning: domestic violence, emotional abuse, gaslighting, less than, mood spoiler, relief, less than. For context, OOP refers to a Katbiktab ceremony. This is a religious ceremony which means OOP and her husband are considered married by their religion and legally, but they still haven't had a wedding, which is a larger celebration. OOP switches between referring to this upcoming larger celebration as a wedding and a wedding reception. Original post, October 1st, 2022. Salam alaikum. I'm looking for guidance or comfort as I'm in a difficult situation and I'm struggling with how to proceed. I, 29F Canadian, met my now husband, 29, Egyptian Canadian, in early 2021 via a dating app, but we had mutual friends already. Same university. I quickly fell for him and after a year we got engaged. 2 months later, we had our Katbiktab, Nikah, Islamic ceremony. It was very small, immediate family only. Our wedding reception is in 1 week. 4.5 months after the Katbiktab. There is obviously a fair amount of stress, as we're stretched pretty thin to make the wedding work shortly after purchasing our first home. My husband is in a new job, and I'm in a famously high-stress job. I definitely acknowledge I have not been my best self lately, trying to make ends meet and get myself through each day frankly. On to the red flag. My husband is a charismatic, funny guy. He's loud, as am I. His personality has been something I've loved about him since I met him. But lately, there's less humor and more commentary on world politics. Sometimes right-wing conspiracy, or what I would call conspiracy type stuff. It's preachy. When I engage, it quickly becomes a fight, seemingly regardless of the stance I take. When I take issue with his tone, personal attacks, I get yelled at or told I'm purposefully vilifying him. He's starting to shout at me more often. Today it was in front of his whole family. It was humiliating. I cried. It was over me pushing back when his family told me they had already done the seating chart for their guests. Despite not having the entire guest list, I did not think I was being rude. But I just explained that I needed to work off the draft I had, because I knew it had all guests on it. I was reassuring her she could rearrange tables if I got stuff wrong. My husband interjected himself from the next room shouting at me for saying his mom didn't know everyone that was coming. Then he shouted that he wasn't shouting. We were shouting. I know I shouldn't have, but I called him out on his immaturity. I called him out for yelling in front of our nephews, 9, 7, 1, who were there. I told him to stay out of it if he was going to yell. We finished the seating chart and I left to stay with my parents. We are visiting from out of town. It's been 5 hours since the incident and I haven't heard from my husband. When I left, I gave everyone a quick hug goodbye, including my husband. He didn't walk me to my car. He's been shouting at me more at home too. I avoid certain topics altogether. It got physical once and he put his hand on my throat. He apologized profusely for this and blamed it on frustration at my poor memory during an argument we were having. Sometimes he pushes me, which I find super embarrassing in public, i.e., shoves me out of the way if I go to pay at the store. Despite us often alternating who pays, I have verbalized that my parents don't treat each other that way. I have told him I don't want to be treated that way. I have explicitly said, don't shout at me, don't push me, threatened to involve his older brothers. I'm sure I'm extra upset right now for a handful of reasons. Wedding stress, menses, not praying, work stress. But I'm starting to worry that I'm being willfully blind here. Can I let this slide and pray for change? What else can I try to encourage change? Does this sound like a stress response to you? What would you advise your sister to do in this situation? Thank you for your time. Please be kind. I love my husband and am just at a loss. Edit to clarify the throat grab situation. We had a large verbal altercation where I was upset as I felt he hadn't consulted with me before leaving his last job, and I was feeling huge financial pressure. Catch is, he had mentioned it to me already and I had been supportive of him. Then forgotten. I often don't eat enough and my memory suffers. I'm working on that. I was yelling at him and he was yelling at me and he grabbed me. Immediately let go, and walked away. When we talked about it, I was furious and disgusted. He pointed out that while it was awful of him to do, he did what he was supposed to do. Stopped. Walked away. Basically he didn't let it go any further than scaring me. I didn't have any injury from it. I was just upset. It was still wrong that he did it. And he has apologized. But I do recognize he must have been exceedingly frustrated as I was yelling at him for something I had cheerfully accepted only a couple of days before. Comments were overwhelmingly telling Oop to leave. One from you, Mald1z1. Sister. It sounds to me like you have low self-esteem. Having a man in the house is nice, but you should know that you are fully capable of providing strength and stability to yourself and that you can be your own strong and steady. Women with low self-esteem and who don't believe in themselves are often the prime targets for abuse because they have the misplaced idea or belief that they can't have XYZ in their life or be XYZ without a man. The truth is, you can be your own stability. You are not small. You are very big and strong, and it sounds like you have amazing friends and family who love and care for you a lot, so you aren't alone. Op replied, "Thank you. What you've said is true. And while they were different from one another, this is my second set of serious relationship issues. The first was my high school sweetheart. We were together until 8 years after high school. But he was a closet drinker who ended up getting bad, and I had to kick him out when I realized what was going on and how bad it was affecting me. So twice I have ended up, in too deep, in a bad situation and had to out it to my family. I'm obviously prone to this for some reason and need to work on myself so it never happens again. I'm taking a dance class. I'm going to pick up my art and my writing again. I'm going to focus on improving my house that we own. I'll either be living there and should like me own house, or will need to sell soon, and improving it will be beneficial anyways." Update edited onto the same post. Next day update. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. This thread was the difference between me accepting his apology and calling his behavior out. I told him today I won't tolerate him shouting at me again. Period. He initially escalated and said, "Fine. Call off the wedding then." I called my dad at that point, right in front of him, and told my dad everything. Yes. The throat grab too. Then I called his eldest brother and told him everything too. His mom and eldest brother are on their way here to mediate. I called a friend from work, who got a crash course text after the call to bring her up to speed, so I don't get hanged up on waiting for them all to get here now. Husband is incredibly apologetic, promising change, does not want to call the wedding off. I'm standing my ground that I won't be treated poorly anymore. We're going to discuss everything when his brother, mother get here. Update post. October 2nd, 2022. Apologies in advance. It's been a difficult day, but I realized you would all probably appreciate knowing I'm okay. So here's an update. Last night I slept at my parents' house. When I woke up, no contact from my husband. I called him about 9 a.m. to ask if he was coming to the appointment with the photographer. He said yes. So I picked him up and we went to that together. We didn't really talk. Just thanks for getting the gas, and where's the appointment? Talk. After the photographer appointment, we left the city to head back to our own city an hour away. On the ride, about 20 minutes in, I said we needed to talk about the fight yesterday. He asked, what do we need to talk about? I said, that you yelled at me in front of your family. To start, he didn't seem to want to say anything, so I continued and told him I won't tolerate being shouted at anymore. It's disrespectful and I've made it clear I won't put up with it. He started getting irritated and pushing back. I yelled too. He's stressed. I was trying to plan his side of the seating plan, blah blah blah. I told him that's not the point. It doesn't matter why you're shouting. I won't tolerate being shouted at anymore. I need this to change or I can't go through with spending my life with someone who treats me poorly. He said, well, I'm not changing. So call off the wedding then. He took that back pretty quickly. But not before I called my dad. Right in front of him. I called my dad and told him as plainly as I could that since my husband and I moved in together, he has been increasingly verbally abusive to me. I also told him about the throat grab and the shoving in public. While I was telling my dad this, my husband was speaking quietly beside me. Seriously? You're really dragging them into this? Etc. in my ear. I tuned him out and focused on my convo with my dad. This was telling. I told my dad everything and we made a safety plan. I called him when we got to our city. And again when my husband left. My dad reminds me I do not need to go through with the wedding. And that abuse typically gets worse, not better. I told my dad I don't know whether to go through with the wedding and he tells me he thinks that's the appropriate response here, but reminds me that there's no need to make decisions today. After I called my dad, I asked him, are you calling you mom or am I? He told me to. Instead, I called his eldest brother. His parents are elderly. I told him everything and he spoke to us a bit on the phone. He was perplexed by what I had told him and was condemning his brother's actions. We get home. Husband pouring honey in my ear now about how we're not calling off the wedding. Not getting a divorce. He's sorry and will agree to counseling, etc. We get a phone call. His mom and eldest brother are on their way up to our city to mediate. I called my parents right away. They were not happy with the idea of his family leading a mediation. I have a lot of faith in my eldest brother-in-law, so I was less worried. But also saw fit to call a friend to come over to support me. My friend arrived first. I told her what I told my parents. In front of my husband, she mediated some talking, and pointed out my husband minimizing the times he laid hands on me. She pointed out that it makes sense I don't trust my husband to change when until today he had firmly and repeatedly stated he would not participate in counseling. My friend and I walked around the yard until my brother-in-law and mother-in-law arrived. When they got there, we all sat in the living room. My bill laid the ground rules of no interrupting. I told my story as simply as I could. I read the threats I had typed into my phone notepad my husband had made to me. I explained my husband would not agree to counseling even though I had been asking for months. Then my bill asked my husband if he agreed with what I said. My husband started by saying he had grabbed my throat because she kinda charged me and I hand out to stop her, but yes I did. So I clarified. I said, no, we were arguing and you got frustrated at me and grabbed my throat in anger. I was not coming at you. You were not scared of me or trying to keep me away. His brother asked, is that true? And my husband conceded. My bill announced at this point that the violence was inexcusable. He said it's not a big deal to cancel the Saturday reception. Because either the relationship needs to be done, or we need to work on it over a significant amount of time to mend what's broken and determine whether a healthy relationship can be established at all. He made it clear he will support whatever I decide moving forward. And he will make sure I'm not saddled with all the wedding debt. Many payments to vendors are on my credit cards right now. while my husband packed a bag to head back to his family home. My Bill and I talked about repurposing the wedding venue to be a family reunion spot for all his family flying in. My Mill hugged me, kissed me, told me she loves me. Now I'm a stunned potato curled up in bed with my cat. Alhamdulillah. Thank you to all of you wonderful caring people who were so concerned for me. Thank you for your words of courage and support. Thank you for your prayers. As my friend and I walked the yard, she told me how I had changed since moving in with my husband and had become less sure of myself. She assured me that her and her husband are there for me and are proud of me for standing up for myself. Thank God for good friends. Strangulation is a big factor to consider how dangerous an abuser will become. While he did not strangle her, he put his hands on her throat. Additionally, minimizing his actions, lying about circumstances, refusing counseling, and then wanting to agree are all classic signs of an abuser. I hope Oop did not go through the wedding, especially if her husband did not commit to counseling and working on himself. Her dad is right. Abuse gets worse, not better. Throat grabbing is a precursor to murder. The fact that he lied about why he grabbed her throat to his brother is telling. I get the sense that he's not really remorseful for his behavior at all. His mother and brother were so wonderful, it really makes you wonder WTF went wrong with him. 3 cheers for her support network. Whatever ended up happening, I hope it was a journey of growth. She, at least, seemed off to a great start. Strangling is the scariest form of abuse as it's a huge predictor of murder. She's quite blessed that the Bill was such an understanding and mature man. Also that her father and friend fully support her. Choking, near strangulation victims are 750% more likely to be eventually killed by the abuser.
Girl.
With a case like this, you always have to wonder if her memory really is that bad or if he's just been gaslighting her like crazy. Even with all that craziness, it doesn't sound like she's leaving. So oh well. Another one of those tragic but avoidable story for the future. I doubt she actually has memory problems. What she really has is gaslighting problems. It's sad that I'm always surprised when everyone else is a normal person, because it's usually not the case with these. She's a stunned potato. I am loving her use of language. And kudos to her for getting out. Why is nobody in either family urging this woman to leave him? They're all explicitly saying, this isn't right, and then are following up with scenarios where this relationship could potentially move forward. Since neither family is saying it, I will. Oop needs to leave him. There is no scenario in which her fiancé improves based on what she's shared with us. The only thing that's happening during these interventions is that he's shamed into telling the truth in front of other people, which is not the same thing as actually fixing what's wrong with himself. Furthermore, no partner worth building a life with would need to have these shaming interventions to behave like a decent human being in the first place. This is a fool's errand. Get out. Edit. I just noticed the last update was a year ago, so I'm probably yelling into the void, but hopefully my comment helps someone else in a similar situation. Partners like this do not improve, especially not through coercion, and the best course of action is to get out if your circumstances allow. Regarding the in-laws, how could a family that nice raise such an a-hole? I know this isn't the point of the post, but the support network and stand-up nature of many of the parties involved is incredibly impressive. If anyone reads this and needs to take anything away, abuse typically gets worse, not better. I love a supportive family. OOP's dad and Bill are real gems.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.